Hi. With this lecture, I'd like to go over and hit some highlights of what needs to be in Chapter 4. I realized that I had this in the resources section of the tabs, but had not posted it to any of the weekly tabs. And this is a good week to post it because should be finishing up rewriting or soon finishing up rewriting your chapters 1, 2, and 3 based on our discussions. Although I'm not super strict on that deadline, but it will be nice to finish that up soon as you're collecting your data, so you can begin to, once your data is collected, you can begin to analyze it and write chapters 4 and 5. So to begin this chapter, you need an overview, and the overview should include a restatement of the purpose of your study and your general hypothesis. So it should be just a really short overview of what you're trying to do, and then an overview of what kind of tests you administered. If you just did, this one says post-intervention tests immediately following 3 weeks of each instructional mode. The sample talks about pre and post. So before the intervention, there was a pre-test, afterwards a post-test, and then talks about additional observations. So just a really quick overview. As you can see, even in the sample, it's only 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs. This chapter particularly is very fact-driven. You're not going to editorialize a lot here. You're just going to report what you found. And that primarily would come under analysis of data. And in this, you have certain things that need to be in this, and it needs to be objective. So you're going to have, it's going to be objective and repetitive. You're going to list each of your hypotheses. You can see here it's given a shortened name. And restate your hypothesis, restate how you tested it, and then narrate your statistical test that you did on this, for this hypothesis, to see if your research supported the hypothesis. In this case, on the model, it's talking about t-tests. You can see there's a very particular way to write out your t-tests. T, and this is the number, the n that you tested, -1, or the n, I don't remember if it's n minus 1 or n. This will come off of the test that you run gives you a report. And this information will be in that report, and you can see that it will tell you these numbers. You won't have to do the formula. We'll put it into report to get these numbers. In the sample, they're using for their first hypothesis chi-square, and you can see the table here. So these numbers that they're reporting up here are all in the table, but you want to not only show it in the table, you want to show it in your, narrate it. You want to put it in a sentence format. So all the numbers you can see here. So this table indicates that there was significant, it was statistically significant. P was less than 0.05. The probability of it occurring by chance was less than 0.05. And you can see this asterisk means both of these had statistically significant results. And they indicate that here by saying the chi-square equals 5.12. You can see that the number is right there. We're repeating it. The probability is less than 0.05. She reports both of them. So these results indicated there were significantly fewer dependent behaviors directed towards the teacher. Thus, the results support the hypothesis. And that's what you want to say with each of these hypotheses. Really not going to say much more than that. You will do that for each hypothesis. Oh, I wanted to talk about the tables. I knew there was something else I wanted to talk about. You can see here that the table, I think I had told some of you that the table should come where it makes sense, and then even if there's a big gap at the end of this page. What they've done here is put the table. If we go to hypothesis 3, we can see this more, that hypothesis 3 is not completed. They've ended the page and put the table in the middle. You can do, excuse me, either way is acceptable. I kind of like it with the table following all of the information so that you don't begin another paragraph in the middle. But I wanted to point out here on table 3 also that you may have a result that does not support your hypothesis. In this case, their hypothesis 3 was not supported. The P here is 0.571, and that is greater than 0.05, which means that it was not it did not indicate significantly that it supported their hypothesis. So what this person writing this indicated was that was not confirmed, but there was a trend in the expected direction. So even though it was not statistically significant, her hypothesis shows that her analysis of the data through these statistical tests indicate that it's heading in the right direction, even though there's still more of a probability that it was by chance than you would like in order to confirm your hypothesis. So I just wanted you not to be concerned if you got to the point where you're doing your analysis and it doesn't come up with supporting your hypothesis. That's fine. That happens. It happens to scientists. You don't see it very often because they often don't want to publish the paper if that's what happens, but it does happen. So on the model here, they did have one test here, and you can see actually in this particular example in the model guidelines, a double asterisk would mean that it was highly statistically significant. P is less than 0.01, and it would have two asterisks, and that comes in your table. So that is calculated for you. So additional research questions, we were trying to stay away from additional research questions, but you might have additional observations that you had through your journal that will support and add to the discussion that you have in chapter 5. So you should report them here. And the guidelines or model gives 2 examples of the way informal observations can be reported, and also the sample gives away informal observations. They use similar language. And see, this is why I don't know if I like the table where it is, because we start additional research questions and then have table 4. So either way is fine. So this is where you see the informal observations, and some of you will have more than others, but if there's anything you want to add that you're going to be discussing in chapter 5, this is the place to add it. And then the final section is a summary of results, which is not going to be long. It should be repeat the conclusions of each hypothesis with the sentence. And a lot of what I'm saying is in the guidelines in this blue text. So this will probably be no more than 2 paragraphs, depending on how many hypotheses you have. You're not going to restate all of the statistics. You're just going to restate the results, the conclusions of the results. So example here, the results supported the hypothesis concerning the effect of calculators on students' problem-solving strategies. So you're kind of summarizing the hypothesis and what it supported or didn't support. If we go to the sample, the summary of results, you can see hypothesis concerning off-task behaviors was not supported, but there was a trend in the expected directions. You can see that this is very repetitive. You're basically summarizing and putting in objective sentences what you've said in the analysis of data here. We are going to analyze the results. We analyze the data in here through the statistical tests. We're going to analyze the results in Chapter 5, the results of the tests in Chapter 5. So it's fine to use the language in the outline and the samples. It's a bit repetitive, but that is just fine. It's not a lot of writing. It's just very prescribed writing. More of the work in this chapter will be doing the statistics, and the length will come more from the tables. So you can see this one, the sample is 15 pages, but some of those pages are, 4 of those pages are strictly just a table on each page. So so it's really, they could have all fit on 1 or 1.5 pages. So there's not a lot there. Yours might be shorter if you don't have as many hypotheses. And like I said, feel free to use the examples of the language here and fit it to what you were doing, what you're doing in your research. You can also begin to write this when you're ready, because some of this can be set up ahead of time. You obviously can't do the test scores ahead of time, but you certainly can begin with setting up the hypothesis, the summary. The overview can go because you already have that, unless you changed something as you're collecting data. This is basically your Chapter 3, your plan. If something changed as you began collecting data, you might have to change Chapter 3, and then this would be difference. You can set up your hypothesis and how you tested them, and then we'll do the tables after you collect everything, but we can get it started. Same with the additional research questions will be harder to set up. You can't really do your summary until you've done all of the work, but you could get the outline of this chapter set up. As you begin to collect your data, as you get through it and get an idea of what your data is going to be looking like, we can start to set up meetings to talk about how you are going to test your data. I know we talked about it a little bit in our discussion board. We will be doing, I just wanted people to get an idea from the discussion board what other people were doing. We're going to be doing much more intense talking about it individually as you get ready to write Chapter 4. So that's it, and I will be talking to you.